The air in downtown Chicago is thick with tension, the kind that sticks to your skin. Rain slicks the cracked sidewalks, reflecting the glare of neon signs and the pulsing red of a traffic light stuck on repeat. It's the kind of night where trouble feels just around the corner. Officer Derek Mallory patrols the block with his usual swagger, the kind that's less about confidence and more about control. His eyes lock onto a tall black man in a charcoal overcoat, leaning casually against a brick wall near the entrance of an alley. The man's presence is calm, too calm, and that alone grates on Mallory's nerves. Without a word, Mallory storms up, shoving the man hard against the cold wall. The sound echoes through the alley, drawing the attention of a few pedestrians who hesitate but keep their distance. "What's in your pockets?" Mallory snarls, pressing a forearm into the man's chest. His badge gleams under the flickering street lamp, but his tone is dripping with disdain. The man doesn't flinch. His deep brown eyes stay fixed on Mallory's, unblinking, unreadable. "Careful," he says, voice low, steady. "You don't know what you're doing." That only fuels Mallory's aggression. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I've seen your type 100 times. Lurking, waiting, looking for trouble." The man exhales slowly, like someone holding back a storm. His hand moves slightly toward his coat, and Mallory reacts instantly, grabbing his wrist and slamming it against the wall. The impact draws a sharp breath from the man, not from pain, but from the sheer absurdity of what's unfolding. A small crowd begins to form now, murmurs buzzing in the damp night air. Someone pulls out a phone. The red recording light blinks like a warning Mallory ignores. "You need to let me go," the man says again, this time with a faint edge to his voice. "Now." Mallory smirks. "Or what?" And that's when the man moves, slow, deliberate, and without fear. He slides a leather wallet from his coat pocket and flips it open. The gold letters gleam even in the dim alley light. FBI, Special Agent in Charge, Malcolm Rivers. The shift in the air is immediate. The murmurs from the crowd grow louder. Mallory's smirk falters. His grip loosens. His eyes dart between the badge, the man's steady gaze, and the phone's recording every second. "This is your last chance to step back, officer," Rivers says, his voice carrying a weight that makes even the rain seem quieter. "Before you make the biggest mistake of your career." For the first time tonight, Mallory feels the ground tilt beneath him. He tries to find his footing, but the moment is already slipping away, recorded, witnessed, and impossible to undo. Somewhere in the back of the crowd, someone whispers, "That's the guy leading the federal task force." Rivers straightens his coat, never breaking eye contact. "We'll talk later," he says calmly, stepping away from the wall, but his tone makes it clear. This isn't over. The rain falls harder now, washing over the cracked sidewalks and the thin line between authority and abuse. Mallory stands frozen, knowing this night will follow him far beyond this street. The rain is relentless now, drumming against the cracked pavement and washing the tension down the alley, but it can't erase the weight of what just happened. Officer Derek Mallory stands frozen, water seeping into his collar, heart pounding in a rhythm that has nothing to do with the cold. The crowd hasn't dispersed. If anything, more people have stopped to watch. Phones are still raised, their red recording dots blinking like silent accusations. Special Agent Malcolm Rivers adjusts his coat with deliberate calm, his badge still visible in his hand. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. His authority carries in the way he stands, in the steadiness of his gaze. "You're going to step aside, officer," he says, his tone neither angry nor pleading, just final. "And then you're going to think very carefully about the next words out of your mouth." Mallory swallows hard, but the tight knot of arrogance in his chest won't let go. His training tells him to de-escalate, but his pride whispers louder. "Look, I didn't know who you were," he mutters, trying to sound reasonable. "You were loitering." "Loitering," Rivers cuts in, one eyebrow raised. "On a public sidewalk, while wearing a federal-issued sidearm under my coat, while conducting an operation you just compromised." The murmurs in the crowd swell. Mallory feels his ears burn under the weight of their stares. Every second stretches out like an eternity, and with each tick of the clock, he realizes the videos will be online within minutes, if they aren't already. Rivers takes a step closer, not aggressively, but enough that Mallory can see the fine lettering on the FBI credentials. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asks, voice low. "You didn't just assault a federal agent. You may have jeopardized an ongoing investigation involving multiple agencies. That means lives, innocent lives, could now be at risk. Mallory opens his mouth, but no words come out. Somewhere behind him, another officer approaches. A younger cop, wide-eyed, clearly unsure what to do. He glances from Mallory to Rivers, then back again, like a rookie trying to solve a test he never studied for. "Derek?" the younger officer says hesitantly. "Stay out of this, Hayes," Mallory snaps, but there's less bite in his voice now. Rivers, still calm, addresses Hayes directly. "Officer, I suggest you take your partner here and head back to your cruiser. I'll be filing a formal report with your chief and with internal affairs." Hayes nods quickly, almost grateful for the order, but Mallory doesn't move. Pride, fear, and the creeping realization of how badly he's just messed up all hold him in place. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice shouts, "We got it all on video!" Laughter follows, mixed with the low hum of outrage. Rivers finally tucks his badge back into his coat and steps away from the wall. "We're done here, for now." He turns to leave, but Mallory blurts out, "Wait!" It's more reflex than choice. Rivers stops, glances over his shoulder. "Why are you even out here?" Mallory demands, though his voice lacks the confidence it had minutes ago. Rivers studies him for a moment. "Because I'm doing my job." The real question is, are you? With that, Rivers walks into the rain, disappearing into the blur of city lights. The crowd slowly breaks apart, some still filming, others already typing furiously on their phones. Mallory feels the pit in his stomach grow heavier. He knows this isn't over. He knows tomorrow, or maybe even tonight, his name will be all over the internet. By the time he makes it back to the precinct, the whispers have started. Officers glance up from their desks, some quickly looking away, others staring just long enough to make him feel the weight of their judgment. Captain Morales calls him into her office without a word. The blinds are half closed, but Mallory can see the faint blue glow of a computer screen. Morales is watching the video of him shoving Rivers against the wall. The sound is muted, but the image is crystal clear. "Sit down," she says flatly. Mallory does, his uniform still damp, the cold seeping into his bones. "Do you have any idea who that man was?" Morales asks without looking up from the screen. "I know now," Mallory mutters. "You know now," Morales repeats, finally turning to face him. "Special Agent in Charge Malcolm Rivers, the man leading the Joint Task Force on Organized Crime in this city, and you just interfered with his operation on camera in front of half the block." Mallory tries to explain, but Morales holds up a hand. Just don't. I'm getting calls already. Internal Affairs wants your statement, and if Rivers presses charges..." She lets the sentence hang in the air, heavy and cold. Mallory stares at the floor. "It was a mistake." Morales leans forward. "A mistake that could cost you your badge. Do you understand that?" Before Mallory can respond, there's a knock at the door. An officer steps in holding a small envelope. "For you, Captain," delivered by hand. Morales opens it, scans the contents, and her expression shifts, though not toward relief. She looks at Mallory. "You've been summoned to a meeting with the FBI tonight." Mallory's stomach twists. "What for?" Morales doesn't answer. She simply hands him the note. The handwriting is precise, controlled. 9 p.m. sharp. Federal Building. Do not be late. S.A.C. Rivers. The rain outside hasn't let up, and as Mallory stares at the note, he knows this storm is just beginning. Under the glow of the city's streetlights, Derek Mallory pulls up to the Federal Building. The rain hasn't stopped, and each droplet against the windshield feels like a drumbeat counting down to something inevitable. He sits in his cruiser for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turn white. Walking into that building tonight feels less like a meeting and more like a sentencing. The lobby is quiet, sterile. The sound of his boots against the polished floor echoes too loudly in the empty space. A security guard at the desk looks up, eyes narrowing slightly as if already aware of who Mallory is. Without a word, the guard gestures toward the elevator. "Top floor, he's waiting." Mallory's reflection in the mirrored elevator doors looks older, more worn than he remembers. He adjusts his uniform, trying to appear composed, but the knot in his chest refuses to loosen. The ride up feels endless. When the doors finally open, Malcolm Rivers is there, leaning casually against the wall as if he's been expecting him for hours. "Officer Mallory," Rivers says evenly, his voice betraying no emotion. "Come in." Mallory follows him into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretches out below, a mosaic of lights and shadows. A large wooden desk sits in the center, papers neatly stacked, a coffee mug steaming at one corner. The room smells faintly of leather and old books. Rivers doesn't sit behind the desk. Instead, he circles to the front, leaning against it with arms folded. "Do you know why you're here?" he asks. Mallory shifts uncomfortably. "I assume it's about earlier." "That's one way to put it," Rivers replies. "Another way is that you assaulted a federal agent in the middle of an undercover operation, in front of multiple witnesses, and compromised months of work." Mallory's mouth goes dry. "I didn't know who you were." "That's not an excuse," Rivers says sharply, his calm demeanor cracking for the first time. "You didn't ask. You didn't observe. You reacted. And you did it with the kind of bias that gets people killed." The words land like blows. Mallory wants to protest, to defend himself, but deep down he knows Rivers is right. "Do you know what I was doing out there?" Rivers continues, stepping closer. "I was meeting with a confidential informant, someone who's risking their life to give us intel on a drug syndicate that's been moving weapons across state lines. Your little display may have just scared them off for good." Mallory looks away, unable to meet his eyes. "I'm sorry," he mutters. "Sorry doesn't fix it," Rivers says, his voice low now. "But maybe, just maybe, you can help fix the damage you caused." Mallory blinks, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" Rivers straightens up, walking back toward the desk. He opens a drawer, pulling out a slim black folder and tosses it onto the surface between them. "You're going to work with me, starting tonight." Mallory stares at him. "You want me on an FBI operation?" "I want you to make yourself useful," Rivers corrects. "You know the streets, you know the players, and after tonight, you have a very public reason to be seen with me. We can use that." The idea sits uneasily in Mallory's mind. "And if I say no?" Rivers' expression hardens. "Then you walk out of here without your badge. And by morning, the video will be on every news channel in the country. Your career will be over before the coffee's brewed." The silence stretches. Outside, the rain streaks the windows, distorting the city lights into wavering lines. Finally, Mallory nods once. "All right, I'm in." Rivers gives a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Good. First thing you need to understand. Out there, I'm not Special Agent Rivers. I'm just another guy trying to survive in a bad part of town. You follow my lead, you don't ask questions unless I tell you, and you keep your mouth shut about anything you hear. Got it?" "Got it," Mallory says. "Let's go then," Rivers says, grabbing his coat. "We've got a meeting to salvage." The two men leave the federal building together, stepping into the wet night. The crowd outside has thinned, but Mallory can still feel eyes on them. Passers-by who recognize him from earlier. Maybe even some who have already posted about it online. They walk several blocks in silence until they reach a dimly lit bar tucked into a narrow side street. The neon sign flickers, casting the sidewalk in a sickly blue light. Inside, the air smells of stale beer and cigarette smoke. A jukebox in the corner plays an old blues track, the notes slow and heavy. Rivers leads the way to a booth in the back, sliding in with his back to the wall. Mallory sits opposite, trying to look casual but feeling every nerve on edge. A man appears at the table, a wiry figure with a weathered face and darting eyes. He glances at Rivers, then at Mallory. "This him?" "He's with me," Rivers says simply. The man hesitates, then slides into the booth. "You know, you nearly blew it earlier," he says to Rivers. "Cops don't just roll up on people like that unless something's wrong." "That's why he's here," Rivers says, nodding toward Mallory. "To make it right." The man studies Mallory for a long moment, then leans in. "All right, but if this goes south, it's both your necks on the line." Mallory swallows hard. Whatever he stepped into, it's bigger than he imagined. And for the first time tonight, he wonders if working with Rivers might be the only way to survive it. The booth feels too small for the weight of the conversation. Rivers leans forward, elbows on the table, his eyes locked on the man across from them. Mallory stays quiet, remembering the warning to follow his lead. The hum of the jukebox and the low murmur of other patrons blend into a background haze, but every word at this table cuts through like a blade. The informant, who introduces himself only as Lou, keeps his voice low. "The shipment's still on schedule," he says, glancing toward the bar before continuing. "2 vans, both coming through the east side docks tomorrow night, but they've changed the route. Someone tipped them off about police presence last week." Rivers' expression doesn't change, but his fingers drum lightly on the table. Names? Lou shakes his head. Not yet. I know the faces, but I can't put them down on paper. They're careful, real careful. Mallory finally speaks, his voice measured. If they're that careful, how do you plan to get close enough tomorrow? Lou's eyes flick to him, wary. That's where you come in, officer. You've got the uniform, the authority. People know your face now after today. That means they'll think you're trouble, or an opportunity. Either way, you're a distraction. The implication hangs in the air. Mallory realizes he's being offered up as bait. Rivers nods slowly. He's right. You're going to draw their eyes while I get what we need. That means taking a few risks. Mallory leans back, crossing his arms. And what happens if things go sideways? Rivers' gaze is steady. Then you trust me to pull you out. There's no comfort in the words, but Mallory understands he doesn't have the luxury of refusing. The alternative is losing his badge and his career. Possibly more. Lou slides a folded piece of paper across the table. Doc number, time, and the cover story you'll use. Burn it after you memorize it. Rivers takes the paper, glances at it, and tucks it into his jacket. We'll be there. Lou stands, tossing a few crumpled bills onto the table for his drink. One more thing. There's a guy named Vance. Big, loud, thinks he runs the docks. He doesn't. But if he says move, you move. Cross him and you'll disappear into the water before anyone notices. With that, Lou slips out of the booth and melts into the bar's shadows. For a while, neither Rivers nor Mallory speak. Finally, Rivers finishes his drink and sets the glass down. Let's go. We've got prep to do. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the street lamps. They walk in silence until they reach an unmarked black SUV. Rivers unlocks it with a click. Get in. The ride is quiet, the hum of the engine filling the space between them. Mallory stares out the window, the city blurring past, until Rivers speaks. You did all right back there, he says. Didn't talk too much, didn't ask the wrong questions. Mallory smirks faintly. I'm learning. Good. Keep learning fast. Tomorrow night there won't be room for mistakes. They drive to a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, it's clear this isn't just any storage space. Rows of locked cases, evidence boards covered in photos and notes, and a table littered with surveillance gear make it obvious this is a staging ground. Rivers walks over to one of the boards, pointing to a photo of a heavily tattooed man. That's Vance, the one Lou warned you about. If you see him, don't make eye contact unless he speaks to you, and if he does, keep it short. Mallory studies the photo. Looks like trouble. He is trouble, Rivers says. The kind that doesn't leave loose ends. They spend the next hour going over the plan. Mallory will arrive at the docks in uniform, acting as though he's investigating a noise complaint or suspected theft. His presence will stir the dock workers and keep them distracted, while Rivers operates nearby in plain clothes, planting a tracker on one of the vans. By the time they wrap up, it's well past midnight. Rivers tosses him a burner phone. Keep this on you. I'll call when it's time to move tomorrow. And Mallory looks up. Don't improvise. If something feels wrong, get out. These people won't hesitate. Mallory nods. Got it. They part ways in the parking lot, Mallory heading to his own car. The drive home is long and quiet, but his mind refuses to rest. Images of the docks, the vans, and Vance's hard stare replay in his head. He knows tomorrow could make or break not just his career, but maybe his life. When morning comes, he dresses in his uniform with a new kind of awareness. The badge feels heavier than usual, the fabric of his shirt tighter across his chest. He pockets the burner phone, grabs his duty belt, and steps outside into the crisp air. By the time he arrives at the meeting spot, Rivers is already there, leaning against the SUV with 2 coffees in hand. He hands one to Mallory. You ready? Mallory takes a sip, the bitterness grounding him. Let's get this over with. The road to the docks is quiet, the industrial landscape looming ahead. As they approach, the faint glow of security lights becomes visible, along with the distant sound of machinery and voices. Rivers pulls over a few blocks away. From here, you're on your own. Remember, keep them looking at you and don't break character. Mallory steps out, adjusting his hat. The air smells of salt and diesel fuel. He walks toward the docks, his boots crunching on gravel, heart thudding steadily. The moment he steps into the lit area, heads turn. A few workers pause mid-task, eyeing him warily. He plays it cool, scanning the area as though assessing for trouble. From the corner of his eye, he spots a tall, broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a long leather coat, Vance. Their eyes meet briefly, and Mallory quickly looks away, remembering the warning. Vance steps forward, his voice booming. "Officer, you lost?" Mallory forces a neutral smile. "Just responding to a call about some noise. Didn't realize the docks were this busy at night." Vance studies him for a beat too long, then grins, though it's anything but friendly. Busy's good for business, but maybe not so good for cops poking around. Behind him, Mallory catches a flicker of movement, Rivers blending into the shadows, closing in on one of the vans. And that's when Mallory realizes, if Vance keeps him talking too long, Rivers might not make it out unseen. Mallory keeps his stance relaxed, though every nerve in his body is tightening. Vance takes a few slow steps closer, his boots heavy against the wooden dock planks. Around them, the dock workers seem to pause in their movements, pretending to be busy while keeping their eyes fixed on the exchange. The smell of diesel and salt water mixes with the faint odor of cigarettes wafting from somewhere nearby. "You know," Vance says, voice low now but laced with menace, "we don't usually see uniforms down here unless something's already gone wrong. So either you know something, or you're here to cause something." Mallory offers a small casual shrug. "Just following up on a complaint, that's all. Noise, maybe some late-night deliveries without proper permits. Nothing to make a big deal about." Vance smirks, but there's no humor in it. "Permits, right. And you think you're gonna find any down here at this hour?" The tension in the air thickens. Mallory feels the weight of the man's stare, but he knows holding eye contact too long could be seen as a challenge. Instead, he lets his gaze wander past Vance, scanning the stacks of crates and the vans idling at the far end of the dock. One of them is just barely in view, and in the shadows beside it, a faint movement catches his attention. Rivers is there, hunched low, working fast. He needs to keep Vance distracted. Mallory takes a step sideways, as if adjusting his vantage point. "What I think," he says evenly, "is that whoever's running this place after hours must know the right people to get away with it. Otherwise, the department would be crawling all over this place." Vance tilts his head, intrigued despite himself. "And what makes you think they aren't?" Mallory allows himself a faint smile. "Because I'm the only one here. And I'm not here to bust heads unless someone gives me a reason." There's a pause. The workers' shuffling slows. Somewhere in the dark, the sound of a van door sliding open echoes faintly, followed by a metallic click. Mallory prays it's just Rivers finishing the tracker install. Vance steps even closer now, close enough that Mallory can see the faint scar running along his jawline. "You talk real smooth for a beat cop," he says, "almost like you've dealt with people like me before." Mallory doesn't flinch. "Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but I do know this: men who talk too much usually don't last long in this business." The words hang there, sharp and deliberate. Vance narrows his eyes, studying him. For a moment, it seems like he might take the bait and back down. But then a voice calls out from somewhere behind him. "Boss, someone's at the van!" The air snaps tight. Vance's head whips around, and Mallory sees Rivers freeze for just a split second before disappearing into the shadows. The workers start to move quickly now, two of them heading toward the back of the dock. Vance turns back to Mallory, suspicion burning in his eyes. "You here alone, officer?" Mallory forces himself to stay calm. "Like I said, just checking things out." Vance takes a step forward, his tone darker now. "Then why do I feel like you just brought a friend to my party?" Before Mallory can answer, two more men emerge from between the stacks of crates, one carrying a crowbar, the other with a heavy wrench in his hand. They don't rush him, but their presence tightens the circle around him. Mallory knows he's seconds away from losing control of the situation. He tilts his head toward Vance. "You really want to do this in front of witnesses? Assaulting an officer carries more weight than you think." Vance chuckles, but it's cold. "Witnesses? You think any of these men will talk to the cops? You've got no one here on your side, uniform." Mallory's hand itches toward his radio, but he resists the urge. Any sign of panic could tip things too far. Instead, he subtly shifts his stance, giving himself room to move if things go bad. From somewhere in the dark, a sharp whistle cuts through the noise. It's brief, just 2 notes, but Mallory recognizes it. Rivers' signal. The tracker is planted, and it's time to leave. Mallory glances back at Vance. "You've made your point. I'll file my report and be on my way." Vance studies him for a long moment, then steps aside, though the men with the tools don't move. "Get out of here, officer, and don't come back unless you've got a warrant or a death wish." Mallory gives a curt nod and walks toward the street, his pace steady, refusing to show his back too quickly. He can feel their eyes on him until he's well past the edge of the dock. As soon as he rounds the corner, Rivers is there, emerging from the shadows. "Nice work," he says, keeping his voice low. "We've got the tracker on the lead van. We'll know where it's going next." Mallory exhales slowly, the tension finally easing from his shoulders. "That could have gone bad fast," Rivers smirks faintly. "It still might. This is just the first step. Now we follow the trail and see where it leads." They make their way back to the SUV, the cold night air biting at their skin. Once inside, Rivers starts the engine but doesn't pull away immediately. "Vance didn't buy your cover completely, but you gave him just enough to let you walk. That's a win." Mallory shakes his head. "Feels like I just walked a tightrope with no net." "That's the job," Rivers says simply. "And tomorrow night, the real fun begins." Mallory looks out the window at the docks fading into the distance, the lights shimmering against the water. He knows this isn't over, not by a long shot. And as much as he hates to admit it, a part of him is already bracing for the next round. The black SUV blends into the night traffic as Rivers keeps his eyes fixed on the small tracking monitor mounted to the dashboard. A single blinking dot moves slowly across the map, marking the van's location. Mallory sits in the passenger seat, his body still tense from the confrontation on the dock. The rhythmic hum of the engine is the only sound for a while. "You think they'll head straight to the drop point tonight?" Mallory asks, his voice low. Rivers shakes his head. "Guys like Vance don't make direct runs unless they're desperate. My bet is they'll do a couple of loops, check for tails. We'll have to keep our distance." Mallory leans back, but his eyes remain locked on the monitor. The dot shifts slightly, turning down a side street that snakes along the river. The route is suspiciously roundabout. "They're testing us," Mallory says quietly. "Yeah," Rivers replies, guiding the SUV into a parallel street. "Let 'em. We've got patience on our side." The van's path takes them through dimly lit industrial areas, past silent warehouses and chain-link fences topped with razor wire. Every now and then, the van slows, and Mallory can almost picture someone inside peering out the back window, scanning for pursuers. After nearly 40 minutes of this cautious weaving, the dot finally makes a decisive turn toward the outskirts of the city. Rivers glances at Mallory. "Looks like they're committing now. You ready?" Mallory gives a short nod. "Let's see where this rabbit hole goes." They follow at a careful distance until the van exits the main road, heading down a dirt path barely illuminated by its own taillights. The SUV's headlights are killed instantly, and Rivers relies on the faint glow from the van ahead to guide them. The path ends at a cluster of run-down storage units, their corrugated metal doors rusted and dented. The van pulls up to one near the back, and two men get out, looking around before rolling up the door. Mallory and Rivers stop a good 50 yards away, cloaked in darkness. "Think they're transferring the shipment?" Mallory whispers. "Could be," Rivers answers, grabbing a pair of binoculars from the glove box, "or hiding it until pickup." Through the lenses, Rivers watches as the men carry several heavy crates from the van into the unit. Each crate is marked with faint stenciling, foreign characters that look Eastern European. Mallory doesn't need to see the manifest to guess it's contraband. "This is big," Rivers mutters. "We're talking international supply lines here." Mallory scans the area. The storage yard is mostly deserted, but a single camera on a nearby pole catches his attention. They've got eyes out here. That footage will tell them if anyone came snooping. Rivers lowers the binoculars. "Then we don't give them a reason to suspect anything tonight. We log it, we track them again, and we wait for the right time to move in." They stay hidden until the men finish unloading. The van's doors slam shut and it drives away, heading back toward the city. Mallory exhales slowly, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Let's tail them partway back," Rivers suggests. "Make sure they don't lead us somewhere else before we call it." For another 20 minutes, they shadow the van, but it eventually merges into heavier traffic and disappears. Rivers turns the SUV toward a safe house, a nondescript apartment where they can regroup without drawing attention. Inside, the lights are dim, the furniture sparse. Rivers sets up his laptop, plugging in the tracker's data to map the van's entire route. Red lines snake across the city, highlighting every turn. Mallory stands by the window, looking out at the street below. "You know, this whole setup feels too polished, like they're not just street-level operators. Someone's pulling strings from higher up." Rivers glances over. "You're thinking organized syndicate?" Mallory nods. "And if that's true, Vance might just be a middleman. The real boss could be anywhere. They review the data until nearly 3 a.m., the glow from the laptop casting sharp shadows across the room. Finally, Rivers closes it with a decisive click. We've got enough to bring in surveillance teams tomorrow, but I don't want this getting back to Vance before we're ready. He's jumpy, and jumpy people make stupid moves. Mallory runs a hand over his face, fatigue settling in. Yeah, and stupid moves get people hurt. As they prepare to crash for the night, a faint vibration buzzes from Mallory's phone. He checks the screen. An encrypted message from an unlisted contact. Only 3 words. Watch your back. His eyes narrow. He doesn't recognize the number, but the warning feels genuine. He shows it to Rivers. Could be someone on the inside, Rivers says, frowning, or it could be a setup. Either way, Mallory knows it means the next 24 hours just got a lot more dangerous. He slips the phone back into his pocket, the weight of the message pressing against him. As he lies down on the worn-out couch, his mind runs through every possibility. Vance's suspicious glares, the van's circuitous route, the hidden crates. It's all connected, but the full picture is still just out of reach. And somewhere out there, someone already knows he's digging. The first light of dawn seeps through the blinds, casting pale stripes across the safe house floor. Mallory hasn't slept. The 3 words from the anonymous message still echo in his head. Watch your back. He sits upright on the couch, elbows resting on his knees, scanning every creak and hum from the old building as if expecting someone to come through the door. Rivers emerges from the small kitchenette, a mug of black coffee in hand. He studies Mallory for a moment. You look like you've been up all night. Couldn't sleep, Mallory admits. That text, it wasn't random. Somebody's tracking me. Rivers takes a slow sip. Or they're trying to make you think you're being tracked. Either way, it's working. Mallory gets to his feet and walks to the table where the laptop still sits. He powers it on, the hum of the fan breaking the silence. We need to check last night's data again. If Vance or his crew spotted us, there might be signs. Extra stops, phone pings, surveillance cams picking up their plates. Rivers nods, setting his coffee down and taking the seat beside him. The map from the tracker reappears, red lines tracing the van's erratic movements through the city. Mallory zooms in on the storage facility location, scanning for public camera feeds. There, he says, pointing to a time-stamped still image. It's grainy, but a dark figure stands near the far fence while the crates are being unloaded. Too far to identify, but the stance is rigid, watchful. Rivers leans closer. That's not one of the guys from the van. No, Mallory agrees, which means someone else was watching them, and maybe watching us. They pull more camera angles from nearby traffic intersections, but the mystery figure doesn't appear again. Whoever it was, they vanished into the shadows. Mallory exhales through his nose. If this is a third party, we need to know whether they're friend or foe. The timing of that text suggests they know exactly who I am. Rivers sits back, considering. There's one way to find out. We set bait. Mallory raises an eyebrow. Bait? Yeah, Rivers says. We make a move that looks like we're closing in on Vance, announce it in places we know are bugged, maybe leave a trail on the dark channels, then we see who shows up to interfere. It's risky. Too risky for Mallory's taste, but the idea has merit. If there's a shadow player in this game, forcing them into the open might be their only chance to identify them. Fine, Mallory says at last. But we control the environment. No real assets on the line, no civilians in the crossfire. Rivers smirks. Wouldn't have it any other way. By mid-morning, they're in a different part of the city. A crowded marketplace buzzing with early shoppers and street vendors. Mallory blends in easily in his worn jacket and beanie, the image of a man just passing through. Rivers hangs back near a coffee stall, eyes scanning the flow of people. The bait is simple. Mallory takes a public call, speaking just loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. His words are deliberately vague but suggestive. Mentions of the next shipment, storage unit 47, and a pickup tonight at 9. He's careful to sound like someone arranging a quiet bust. When he hangs up, nothing happens immediately. The crowd keeps moving, vendors keep shouting, children dart between stalls. But 20 minutes later, Rivers spots him. A man leaning casually against a lamppost, pretending to scroll through his phone but glancing up every few seconds toward Mallory. Got a tail, Rivers murmurs into the mic hidden in his collar. Mallory doesn't turn his head. Describe. Tall, mid-40s, leather jacket, clean shave. trying too hard to look disinterested. Let him follow, Mallory replies. He buys a paper bag of roasted peanuts from a vendor and starts walking toward the edge of the market where the streets narrow and foot traffic thins. The man in the leather jacket falls in behind, keeping a steady distance. They turn down a side street lined with shuttered shops and graffiti-tagged walls. Here, the noise of the market fades, replaced by the distant hum of traffic. Now, Mallory says quietly. He stops abruptly, turns, and locks eyes with the man. For a moment, neither speaks. Then the man smirks faintly. You don't waste time. Who sent you? Mallory demands. The smirk doesn't fade. Someone who doesn't want to see you wind up in a body bag. That text last night? That was me. River steps out from behind a dumpster, gun drawn but angled low. And why should we believe you're not working for Vance? Because Vance isn't the one you should be worried about, the man says, his tone suddenly serious. There's another player in this city, bigger than him, bigger than you realize. They've been watching both of you since the docks, and they don't like outsiders meddling in their business. Mallory studies him carefully. Name. The man shakes his head. Not here. Too many ears. You want the truth? Meet me at Pier 16 tonight. Midnight. Come alone. With that, he turns and walks away, disappearing into the maze of alleys before they can stop him. Rivers holsters his weapon, muttering under his breath. This is a setup if I ever heard one. Maybe, Mallory says, eyes narrowing. But if he's telling the truth, we just stumbled into something way bigger than Vance. The night air at Pier 16 is heavy with salt and diesel, the low rumble of cargo ships drifting in from somewhere beyond the dark water. Rusted cranes loom like silent sentinels, their skeletal arms frozen in mid-reach over the rows of shipping containers stacked like giant bricks. The place is mostly deserted at this hour, just the way Mallory expected. He stands in the shadow of a warehouse, hood pulled low, eyes scanning every corner. The glow from a distant security lamp throws long, shifting shapes across the cracked concrete. A faint fog curls up from the water's edge, blurring the line between sea and sky. Rivers is nowhere in sight, per Mallory's instructions. But Mallory knows he's out there, probably perched in some unseen vantage point with binoculars and a suppressed rifle at the ready. Alone was the rule for the meeting, but only a fool takes that literally. Footsteps echo faintly on the pier, measured and deliberate. The man from the marketplace, leather jacket, sharp eyes, emerges from the mist, hands visible at his sides. He stops about 10 feet away, close enough for his voice to carry without shouting. You came, the man says. I'm here, Mallory replies evenly. Now start talking. The man glances around, his gaze lingering on the container stacks as if expecting someone or something to appear. The people watching you aren't just some local muscle. They're part of an operation called the Grid. No one knows exactly who runs it, but they've got influence in every major port on the East Coast. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, it all flows through their network, and anyone who threatens that flow disappears. Mallory crosses his arms. And where does Vance fit into this? He's a middleman, the man says. Ambitious, but not nearly smart enough to be the real threat. The Grid lets him play king in this city because he keeps them supplied. But lately he's been sloppy, bringing in people who draw too much attention, like you. Mallory studies him for a long moment. Why tell me this? What's your angle? The man's expression hardens. Because I used to work for them, and I know what they're capable of. If they think you're FBI, they'll put you in the ground before you even get a warrant signed. You used to work for them, Mallory repeats. And now you're what? Some kind of good Samaritan? The man lets out a humorless laugh. Let's just say I'm paying off old debts. They took something from me. A lot, actually. And I've been looking for the right way to hit back. You might be it. Before Mallory can respond, a sharp metallic clang echoes from somewhere behind the containers. Both men turn their heads in unison. The sound comes again, closer this time, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. The man curses under his breath. We're not alone. 3 figures emerge from between the container stacks, dressed in dark tactical gear. No visible badges, no insignia. Their movements are efficient, predatory. One of them lifts a hand, signaling the others to fan out. Friends of yours? Mallory mutters. The man shakes his head. If they were mine, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The lead figure steps forward, voice distorted through a mask. Hands where we can see them, now! Mallory's mind races. Their posture, their equipment, it's too clean for street thugs, too heavy for random dock security. Whoever they are, They came prepared. I don't think they're here for a friendly chat, Mallory says quietly. Then you'd better decide fast whether you trust me, the man replies, eyes flicking toward a narrow gap between two shipping containers. Without another word, they bolt for the gap, boots pounding against the pier. Shouts erupt behind them, followed by the sharp crack of suppressed gunfire. Bullets whip past in muted snaps, punching holes into steel and wood. They weave through the container maze, the smell of oil and salt filling Mallory's lungs. The man leads them toward a service ladder bolted to the side of a crane. Without hesitation, he starts climbing. Mallory follows, heart hammering. Below, the masked figures appear at the base, one of them firing upward. Sparks fly as rounds ricochet off the metal frame. At the top, they scramble onto a narrow catwalk that sways slightly in the wind. From here, the entire pier stretches out like a dark labyrinth. The man points toward a rope dangling from the crane's far side. That's our exit. Mallory eyes the drop. That's insane. Got a better idea? The man shoots back. No time to argue. Mallory grabs the rope and swings out, the cold night air rushing past him. He lands hard on the deck of a nearby cargo ship, knees absorbing the shock. The man follows a second later. They duck behind a stack of barrels just as the masked pursuers reach the edge of the crane. Two of them start down the rope, but a sudden blinding beam of light sweeps across the pier. Rivers from his hidden perch unleashing the high-powered spotlight of his SUV. The glare forces the attackers to retreat, cursing as they melt back into the shadows. Mallory exhales slowly, adrenaline still coursing through him. You planned for this? Not exactly, the man says, catching his breath. But I figured you'd have someone watching your back. Smart move. Mallory studies him. The night has stripped away any pretense. This isn't a chance meeting. This man knows too much, moves too well. Tomorrow, Mallory says, you're going to tell me everything you know about the grid. Names, locations, operations, no more half-truths. The man nods once. Tomorrow. But for now, we get off this pier before they regroup. The city is still asleep when Mallory and the man, who has yet to give a real name, slip away from the pier and into the industrial backstreets. Streetlights cast pools of pale orange over cracked asphalt, but most of the route is swallowed in shadow. Mallory keeps his pace steady, scanning for tails, while the man moves with the fluid caution of someone who's been hunted before. They finally duck into a run-down diner whose neon sign flickers like it's on its last breath. Inside, the air smells of burnt coffee and fried onions. A lone waitress glances up but says nothing, just nods toward a corner booth. The man slides in first, keeping his back to the wall, eyes on the door. Mallory sits across from him. Name. The man hesitates, then says, Call me Carter. Mallory doesn't flinch. Real one. Close enough, Carter replies with a half smile. We both know names don't mean much in this line of work. The waitress pours 2 cups of coffee without being asked, leaving them in silence broken only by the hum of an ancient refrigerator. Mallory takes a sip. Lukewarm, bitter, but it'll do. All right, Carter, Mallory says, leaning forward. The grid. You've given me a taste. I want the whole picture. Carter's eyes dart briefly toward the door again before he starts. They're not just a gang or a cartel. They're a consortium. Ex-military, corrupt politicians, corporate executives with more money than conscience. They built the network during the chaos after the Gulf conflicts, using military-grade logistics to move anything, anywhere. And they learned to make people vanish, witnesses, rivals, entire families, without leaving a trace. Mallory listens, noting the precision in Carter's language. And you worked for them. Operative, logistics, sometimes cleaner, Carter admits. I moved shipments, handled problems. I told myself it was just a job, but you don't move crates labeled medical supplies that smell like cordite without knowing the truth. Why leave? Carter's jaw tightens. My sister. She got caught in the crossfire of one of their cleanup jobs. They called it collateral. I called it unforgivable. The weight in his voice is real, and Mallory recognizes it. Loss that turns into fuel. So now you want to burn them down. Carter nods. But you can't take down the grid from the outside. They've got too many layers. You have to get inside, pull the right threads, and watch it collapse. Mallory leans back, considering. And you think I'm that thread? I know you are, Carter says. Because they're already watching you. You're in their crosshairs whether you like it or not. A sharp gust of wind rattles the diner's glass door, drawing both their eyes. Outside, a black SUV idles across the street, headlights dimmed. Mallory notes the tinted windows, the way it doesn't move for a full 10 seconds before slowly rolling away. They're not subtle, Mallory mutters. They don't have to be, Carter says. It's a message. They know where you are. Mallory finishes his coffee in one swallow. Then we start tonight. I want names, I want routes, and I want Vance. Carter pulls a crumpled envelope from his jacket and slides it across the table. Inside are photographs, grainy surveillance shots of men loading crates into unmarked vans, stacks of documents stamped with port codes, and a list of what look like offshore bank accounts. That's just the outer layer, Carter says. The deeper we go, the uglier it gets. Mallory tucks the envelope into his coat. Ugly doesn't scare me. Carter's expression is unreadable. Good, because once we start, there's no stopping. The grid will either bury us, or we bury them. They leave the diner before the sun rises, parting ways with an unspoken agreement to meet again that night. Mallory heads straight for his safe house, a nondescript apartment above a pawn shop. Inside, Rivers is waiting, gear spread across the table like a miniature arsenal. Rivers looks up. So, the mystery man talk? Mallory tosses the envelope onto the table. His name's Carter, former grid operative, claims he's got intel to tear them apart. Rivers flips through the photos, whistling low. If this is real, it's big. It's real, Mallory says. The question is whether he's playing both sides. You want me to tail him? No, Mallory says after a pause. I want him to think we trust him. At least enough to let him get comfortable. If he's legit, we'll know soon enough. If he's not… Rivers finishes the thought. We deal with it. Mallory nods. Then he studies one of the photos, a container with a faded stencil that reads Port M72. He knows that code. It's an abandoned section of the old shipyard, supposedly condemned after a chemical spill years ago. In reality, it's perfect for smuggling. Off-grid, unpatrolled, and forgotten by everyone except those who profit from it. They've got a shipment coming in there, Mallory says, and I'm willing to bet Vance is running point. Rivers' eyes narrow. So we hit it? Mallory smiles faintly. We hit it, and we see who crawls out of the shadows when we do. The rest of the day is spent prepping. Maps spread across the table, weapons checked, routes memorized. By dusk, the safe house feels like the calm before a storm. As night falls, Mallory shoulders his gear and steps into the cold. Somewhere in the maze of docks and cranes, the grid is moving pieces across their board, but tonight, he plans to knock the whole thing sideways. And whether Carter turns out to be an ally or a traitor, Mallory knows one thing for certain. This is only the beginning. The night air at Port M72 is damp, heavy with the scent of salt and rust. Massive cranes loom over the deserted docks like skeletal sentinels, their steel arms frozen in mid-reach. Somewhere beyond the shadows, waves slap against the pilings in a slow, rhythmic pulse. Mallory moves with practiced silence, each step placed deliberately on weathered planks. Rivers is at his side, his breathing steady, his eyes scanning the labyrinth of stacked containers. They've timed their approach perfectly. The grid prefers the witching hours for their largest moves, when the city sleeps and the harbor crews are long gone. Tonight, the moon is a thin sickle behind a curtain of drifting clouds, offering just enough light to make out shapes but not faces. Through the faint mist, Mallory spots movement. Two men in dark jackets are posted near a container with the same faded Port M72 stencil Carter's intel described. They're armed, shoulders stiff, fingers restless on their weapons. Mallory signals to Rivers with a subtle tilt of his head, then melts into the shadow of a nearby stack. From here, they can hear the low rumble of an approaching diesel engine. Moments later, a black cargo truck rolls into view, its headlights cutting brief, sharp lines across the dock before switching off. 4 more men climb out, each carrying themselves with the wary confidence of professionals. One of them, taller than the rest, has a scar running from the corner of his mouth to his jaw. Mallory knows that face. Vance, he whispers under his breath. The grid's enforcer. The man who had personally overseen at least 3 disappearances Mallory had investigated in the past year. The kind of operator who didn't leave loose ends, unless they were bait. Vance barks orders in a voice that carries over the harbor's stillness. The men begin unloading crates from the truck, stacking them onto a forklift that trundles toward the marked container. Each crate bears a shipping code and a red hazard diamond. Mallory knows those aren't chemicals, they're weapons. Military-grade hardware meant for clients who pay in blood and currency alike. Rivers leans in close. We could take them now. Not yet, Mallory murmurs. I want to see who else shows up. They wait, watching as the operation continues with mechanical precision. Then, almost on cue, headlights flare again from the far end of the dock. A sleek black SUV glides into the scene, stopping just short of the container. The back door opens and Carter steps out. Rivers tenses. He's working with them? Mallory's jaw tightens, but he doesn't speak. Carter's posture is calm, his movements unhurried. He walks directly to Vance, shakes his hand, and leans in for a quiet exchange. Whatever Carter says makes Vance smile, an expression that's more predator than friend. It's a dangerous moment. If Carter has been playing them, this entire night could end with Mallory and Rivers in body bags. But something in Carter's body language is off. His right hand remains in his jacket pocket, his eyes flicking once, just once, toward the shadows where Mallory is hidden. A signal. Mallory decides. We move. They break cover in a coordinated surge, Rivers circling wide while Mallory closes the distance from the blind side. The first guard barely has time to register the blur before Mallory's elbow drives into his temple, dropping him silently. Rivers disarms another with a swift twist, sending the man's rifle clattering across the dock. Shouts erupt. Vance spins, drawing a pistol, but Carter moves first. In a single fluid motion, he pulls a suppressed sidearm from his pocket and puts a round into the dock beside Vance's feet. Not to kill, just to shift the balance. Stand down! Carter's voice cuts through the chaos. This shipment isn't leaving here tonight. For a moment, everything freezes. The grid men look between Carter, Mallory, and Rivers, trying to decide where the real threat lies. Mallory uses the hesitation, stepping into view, his own weapon leveled squarely at Vance. Drop it, Mallory says. Now! Vance's eyes narrow. You have no idea what you're walking into. I know enough, Mallory replies. And I'm done watching you tear the city apart. Vance glances at Carter, and in that instant Mallory sees it. The flicker of recognition. The unspoken history. Carter wasn't here to betray them. He was here to deliver Vance on a silver platter. The stalemate shatters as one of the guards makes a desperate move, reaching for his weapon. Rivers drops him with a single precise shot to the leg, sending the man sprawling with a cry of pain. The others freeze again, suddenly less sure of their odds. This ends now, Carter says, stepping closer to Vance. You walk away in cuffs, or you don't walk away at all. Vance studies him for a long moment, then slowly lets the pistol clatter to the ground. You think you've won, he says quietly, but the grid doesn't die because you take out one piece. Mallory steps forward, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. Maybe not, but it's a start. With Vance secured and the guards disarmed, Carter turns to Mallory. We've got to move. Once they realize Vance is gone, they'll send everything they have to get him back. Mallory nods. They haul the crates into the truck, planning to turn them over to the bureau before the night's over. But as they pull away from the docks, Mallory catches sight of a figure watching from the shadows atop a container. Too far to identify, but close enough to feel the intent. The grid is still out there, watching, waiting, and this war has only just begun. The bureau's safe house sits on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind a row of derelict warehouses that no one dares to approach after dark. From the outside, it's nothing but another forgotten structure with boarded windows and peeling paint. Inside, however, the air hums with quiet urgency, computers whirring, encrypted lines buzzing with incoming intel, and the low murmur of agents coordinating a dozen operations at once. Mallory drives the truck into the fenced compound, the gates shutting behind them with a heavy metallic thud. Rivers hops out first, scanning their perimeter while Carter steps down from the passenger side, his gaze shifting to the crates they salvaged from Port M72. Secure these in evidence lockup, Carter orders 2 agents in tactical gear. Chain of custody starts now. No one touches them without my authorization. The agents nod and begin unloading the crates, their movements crisp and efficient. Mallory watches them for a moment, the adrenaline from the dockside confrontation still burning faintly in his veins. Vance sits cuffed in the back seat, his expression unreadable, his eyes fixed on the floor as though memorizing every detail of the ride. Take him to interrogation 2, Carter says, handing over the prisoner to another pair of agents. Double guard, audio and video running. I want every word he says recorded. Mallory follows Carter inside. the hum of fluorescent lights filling the narrow hallway. The safe house smells faintly of strong coffee and cold steel, a mix of vigilance and endurance. Carter leads them into the operations room, where a wall of monitors displays satellite feeds, traffic cams, and a constantly updating network map marked with red and yellow dots. "That's them?" Mallory asks, nodding toward the red markers. "The grid's known cells," Carter confirms. "Every dot is a location we've tied to weapons movement, money laundering, or safe houses. The problem is," he gestures to a cluster of yellow dots, "these are the unknowns. Suspected activity but no hard proof yet." Rivers folds his arms. "How many of those are in the city?" "Too many," Carter replies. "And they're getting bolder. What happened at Port M72 wasn't just a drop, it was a statement. Vance was supposed to be untouchable. Taking him out will shake them, but it'll also light a fire under whoever's pulling the strings." Mallory studies the map, his eyes narrowing at one particular yellow dot near the waterfront. "That one, what is it?" "An old shipyard," Carter says. "Mostly abandoned, but our chatter picks up strange activity there every couple of weeks. If I had to bet, I'd say it's one of their main staging areas." "Then why haven't we hit it yet?" Rivers asks. Carter gives him a pointed look. "Because without someone on the inside, we'd be going in blind, and blind gets people killed." Before anyone can respond, a young analyst rushes in, clutching a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this. The grid just moved. 2 SUVs left a known safe house 15 minutes ago, heading toward the city perimeter. No plates, tinted windows, 4 to 6 passengers each." Carter takes the tablet, scrolling through the live feed. "Where are they now?" "Last I seen them passing through Industrial Sector 9, the analyst says. "We lost visual after that." Mallory exchanges a look with Rivers. "They're either running or regrouping." Carter sets the tablet down. "Either way, we can't just sit here. Vance is our best shot at figuring out their next move. I'll handle the interrogation. You two get some rest. We might not have another chance once this starts rolling." Mallory doesn't argue, but rest is the last thing on his mind. Instead, he wanders to the observation room adjacent to interrogation 2. Through the one-way glass, Vance sits shackled to the table, posture relaxed, a faint smirk on his face. Carter enters the room, closing the door behind him, and sits across from the prisoner. The conversation begins quietly. Questions about the dock, about the crates, about names and locations. Vance gives nothing but vague deflections, his smirk never fading. Then Carter shifts tactics, leaning in and speaking low enough that Mallory can't catch every word. Whatever he says wipes the smirk clean off Vance's face. Vance's eyes dart toward the glass for a fraction of a second, as if sensing Mallory's presence beyond it. Then, in a tone that's suddenly sharper, he says, "You have no idea how deep this goes. You take me out, 10 more will step in, and one of them's already inside your precious bureau." Mallory feels his stomach tighten. An inside man. That would explain the near misses, the blown intel, the shipments that vanished before raids. Carter doesn't flinch. "Names! Now!" But Vance only leans back, shackles rattling lightly against the table, and says, "Catch me before they do, and maybe I'll tell you." Before Carter can press further, an alarm blares through the safe house. 2 sharp, repeating tones that mean only one thing: perimeter breach. Mallory bolts from the observation room, Rivers already sprinting toward the entrance. Through the security feed, they see it. 3 black SUVs tearing through the outer fence, armed men spilling out as soon as the vehicles skid to a halt. The grid isn't regrouping. They're here. The outer gates groan and buckle under the force of the SUVs. Metal shrieks as it folds inward, the chain-link fencing snapping like brittle twine. The safehouse perimeter lights flood the yard, illuminating figures in tactical black, faces hidden behind balaclavas, weapons raised. Mallory doesn't hesitate. "Positions!" he shouts, sprinting toward the nearest weapons locker. Rivers is right behind him, already chambering a round into his rifle. Sirens blare through the compound, the red emergency lights pulsing in sync with the pounding of Mallory's heartbeat. Carter's voice comes over the intercom, steady but urgent. "All units, hold the line. Protect the evidence and the detainee. No one gets in or out." 2 agents on the outer wall fire warning bursts, the crack of their rifles echoing off the concrete. The intruders respond with a sudden, coordinated hail of gunfire, bullets sparking off steel and chipping the walls. A flashbang arcs over the fence, detonating with a blinding white flare. The shockwave rattles the windows and sends a ripple of chaos through the defenders' line. Mallory dives behind a concrete barrier, blinking hard to clear his vision. His ears ring, but he forces focus. Three attackers are advancing from the left, using the cover of an overturned SUV as they push toward the main building. Mallory fires short, controlled bursts, dropping one and forcing the others to retreat behind cover. Inside the operations room, analysts scramble to back up sensitive data while others feed real-time intel to the defense teams. "Multiple hostiles breaching the east wall," one of them calls out. "Second wave incoming." Rivers ducks behind a sandbag line and shouts to Mallory, "They're not here for a firefight. They want Vance." Mallory knows he's right. This isn't random. It's extraction. Over comms, Carter barks, "Seal interrogation 2. Move the detainee to the secure bunker." But before the order can be fully executed, the hallway cameras show three armed men already inside the building, moving with alarming precision. "How the hell did they get in?" an agent yells. Mallory's gut twists. The breach is too coordinated, too clean. Vance's warning about an inside man echoes in his head. "Rivers, with me," Mallory orders, sprinting toward the main corridor. They move fast, weapons ready, passing two downed intruders and an agent tending to a shoulder wound. The sounds of gunfire are closer now, sharper in the confined space. When they reach the interrogation wing, the steel door to room 2 is already open. Inside, Vance sits exactly where they left him, but two masked men are cutting through his shackles with bolt cutters. One turns, raises his weapon, but Rivers fires first, dropping him instantly. The other grabs Vance by the arm and hauls him up. "Move!" he growls, firing a wild burst toward the doorway. Bullets tear into the wall inches from Mallory's head. He returns fire, forcing the attacker to drag Vance back deeper into the hallway toward the side exit. Carter appears from the opposite end of the corridor, sidearm in hand. He and Mallory advance in a deadly pincer, cutting off the escape route. The masked man realizes too late. He's boxed in. He shoves Vance forward, using him as a human shield. "Let him go," Carter says, voice low but firm. The man's grip tightens, the muzzle of his weapon pressing into Vance's temple. "Back off, or your prisoner dies." Mallory doesn't blink. "He's not your prisoner," he says evenly. "He's your liability. And if you think the people you work for will save you after you botch this, you're wrong." For a flicker of a second, the attacker's stance falters. It's enough. Rivers takes the shot, a clean hit to the shoulder that sends the man stumbling. Carter lunges, wrenching the weapon free, while Mallory yanks Vance back to safety. But the fight isn't over. Explosions boom from the compound's north side. Smoke floods the corridor, stinging eyes and lungs. The grid's forces are pulling back, but not empty-handed. The live drone feed shows them making off with two of the smaller evidence crates. Carter curses under his breath. "We can't let them leave with those." Mallory glances at Vance. "Stay here. You're not going anywhere until we figure out who set this up." Vance gives a dry laugh. "If I were you, Agent, I'd be more worried about what's in those crates than about me." Ignoring him, Mallory and Rivers push through the smoke, breaking into the open yard just in time to see the SUVs peeling out through the wrecked fence. Bullets whiz past as Mallory takes aim, his shots punching through the rear tires of the last vehicle. It skids, crashes into a concrete pillar, and flips onto its side. The occupants scramble out, but Carter's backup team is already on them, weapons drawn. Two SUVs escape into the night. One lies crippled in the yard, its cargo spilling from the shattered rear hatch, sleek black cases, each marked with a series of numbers and a symbol Mallory doesn't recognize. As agents secure the survivors and gather the scattered cases, Carter steps beside Mallory. "This was a message," he says grimly. "They just told us they can hit us anywhere, anytime." Mallory scans the wreckage, the acrid smoke curling into the cold night air. "Then we hit back harder," he replies. But deep down, he knows the attack isn't the end. It's the opening move in a much larger game. Somewhere beyond the compound, the grid is already planning their next strike. And if Vance was telling the truth about the mole inside the bureau, the next attack might come from a direction they least expect. The compound is a mess. Smoke lingers in the air like a stubborn fog, the scent of gunpowder and burned rubber mixing with the metallic tang of blood. Agents move quickly, securing the last of the attackers and tending to the wounded. The echo of sirens fades into the distance, leaving only the low hum of generators and the clipped voices over comms. Mallory pulls off his tactical gloves and kneels beside one of the captured men. The attacker glares at him through a mask streaked with dirt and sweat. Mallory rips it off, revealing a gaunt, pale face with sunken eyes and a tattoo running from his jaw to his neck. a symbol Mallory has only seen once before in an old classified file about the grid. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me who sent you," Mallory says, voice low and even. The man smirks, blood staining his teeth. "You already know." Before Mallory can press further, Carter steps in. "We'll interrogate them later. Right now, I need you in the ops room." The walk back is tense. Every corridor feels different now, like the walls are holding secrets. When they enter the operations center, Rivers is already at a terminal, pulling up the compound's internal security logs. "Here," Rivers says, spinning the screen toward them. "Look at this." The footage is grainy but clear enough. Moments before the attack, one of the internal security gates opened on its own. No alarms, no override codes, just opened. "That gate isn't on the main network," Carter mutters. "It's isolated." "Which means someone on the inside," Mallory finishes. Rivers types rapidly, tracing the system logs. The access command came from a workstation inside this building. And here's the kicker. It's not just any workstation, it's one of ours. The name that pops on the screen makes Carter's jaw tighten. Dawson. Mallory feels the air grow colder. Special Agent Mark Dawson. Trusted, experienced, the kind of man who shakes your hand and looks you dead in the eye. He's been in the Bureau for over a decade. If he's the leak, the implications are devastating. "Where is he now?" Mallory asks. Rivers checks. He left the compound right before the attack started, claimed he was responding to a field call downtown. Carter curses under his breath. "That's no coincidence." Mallory straightens. "Then we bring him in, quietly." Before they can move, an alarm blares again. This time it's not an external breach, it's internal. The bunker where Vance is being held has triggered a proximity alert. Carter snaps into motion. "Move!" They race down the corridor, weapons ready. As they round the last corner, they see 2 figures at the bunker door. One is Vance, the other is a man in a bureau jacket with his back to them. Dawson. "Step away from the door!" Mallory shouts. Dawson freezes, then turns slowly. His face is unreadable, but his hand is hovering dangerously close to the sidearm at his hip. "You don't understand," he says evenly. "If we keep Vance here, more people are going to die." "You open the gate," Carter growls. Dawson shakes his head. "I did what I had to do. You think the Bureau has clean hands? You think Vance is the only one playing both sides?" Mallory takes a step closer. "Whatever your reasons, you put lives at risk. That ends now." For a long moment, no one moves. Then Dawson exhales sharply, like he's made a decision. He draws his weapon, not toward Mallory, but toward Vance. Mallory reacts instantly, firing a single round. Dawson's weapon clatters to the floor as he collapses, clutching a wound in his shoulder. Rivers moves in to cuff him while Carter checks on Vance. The prisoner seems almost amused. "Looks like you've got more friends than you thought," he says with a smirk. Back in the ops room, Dawson sits cuffed at a steel table. The interrogation begins, but he's not the picture of guilt. They get defiance instead. "You're chasing the wrong target," he says. "The grid doesn't need me anymore. They're already inside your systems, your operations, your people. Taking me down won't stop what's coming." "What is coming?" Mallory demands. Dawson leans back, his silence more unnerving than any answer. Before Mallory can press further, Rivers bursts in with urgent news. "We cracked one of the cases they left behind. You're not going to like what we found." On the table in the evidence room lies a sleek black device, no bigger than a briefcase. Its surface is etched with the same strange symbol from the attacker's tattoo. Inside are layers of circuitry and something else, a compressed vial of a pale, cloudy liquid. "What is that?" Carter asks. Rivers's voice is low. "If I'm reading this right, it's a prototype delivery system for a bioweapon. Small scale, targeted dispersal. And it's already been tested." The room goes silent. Mallory feels the weight of it settle in. The attack wasn't about Vance, not entirely. It was about retrieving these weapons. And if 2 SUVs escaped, then at least part of the grid's plan is already in motion. "We need to track them before they disappear," Carter says. Mallory nods. "And we start with Vance. He's not just a loose end. He's a map." Outside, the night feels sharper, the air colder. Somewhere out there, 2 vehicles are carrying pieces of a weapon that could devastate a city. The grid has made their move. Now it's the Bureau's turn. Mallory knows this isn't just another case, it's a war. And tonight was just the first battle. The city glows in the distance, a sea of lights that hides the danger moving within it. From the rooftop of the Bureau's field office, Mallory watches the skyline through binoculars, his jaw tight. Somewhere down there, the escaped SUVs are slipping through traffic, carrying a weapon that could kill thousands. Every second lost means the trail gets colder. Inside the command center, the atmosphere is taut with urgency. Rivers is at the main console, tracking traffic cams and drone feeds. Carter leans over his shoulder, scanning the map of possible escape routes. They knew exactly where to go, Carter mutters. No traffic cameras in these zones, minimal patrol presence. This was planned down to the second. Which means they're heading to a secure handoff, Mallory says, stepping inside. We need eyes in the blind spots. Rivers nods. Already deploying undercover teams. But there's something else. I've run the chemical signature from the device we recovered. It's not just a bioweapon. It's a strain designed for precision targeting. Whoever they're after, they want them dead without raising alarms. Mallory frowns. Assassination at a scale no one sees coming. Before they can discuss further, an encrypted call comes through on Carter's secure line. He answers, and the voice on the other end is low, urgent. Mallory catches fragments. Downtown warehouse, transfer in progress, 90 minutes. When Carter hangs up, his face is set. We've got a location, but it's not just the SUVs. They're meeting with a higher-level grid operative. If we take him alive, we can unravel the entire cell. They move fast. Tactical gear is strapped on. Vehicles are prepped. In the back of the lead SUV, Mallory checks his sidearm and the spare magazines. His mind races, not with fear but with calculation. Every entry point, every possible trap. The grid is smart. They'll have guards, contingencies, maybe even inside help. By the time they reach the warehouse district, the streets are quiet. Sodium lights buzz overhead, casting everything in a sickly orange glow. Their target building is a squat, windowless structure, its corrugated walls rusted but sturdy. From the outside, it looks abandoned. Rivers feeds live drone footage to Mallory's headset. 2 SUVs are parked inside the loading bay, engines still warm. 3 armed men stand watch at the main door, another 2 on the roof. Positions, Carter orders. The team splits. 2 agents circle to the rear, another pair take the roof access ladder. Mallory moves with Carter toward the loading bay. Every footstep is deliberate, every movement silent. They're 20 feet from the door when a sharp crack pierces the air, a rifle shot. One of the roof guards drops instantly, but the others shout, scrambling for cover. The element of surprise evaporates. "Move!" Mallory shouts. Gunfire erupts, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Mallory presses to the wall, returning fire in short, controlled bursts. Carter takes down one of the door guards with a clean shot. Rivers drops another from his vantage point. Inside, chaos explodes. The grid operatives rush to secure the cases, shouting orders in a language Mallory doesn't recognize. He pushes through the doorway, sidestepping a hail of bullets. His focus locks on a man near the center of the room, tall, lean, wearing a dark suit that stands out among the tactical gear. This is no foot soldier. Mallory advances, weaving between crates. The man sees him and bolts toward a side exit, 2 guards covering his retreat. Mallory drops one guard, Carter drops the other. They chase the suited man into a narrow corridor that smells of oil and damp concrete. Halfway down, the man throws a metal canister to the ground. Smoke billows instantly, choking the air. Mallory pulls his mask on, pushing forward. The outline of the man flickers in the haze. When they burst into the alley, the suited man is climbing into a black sedan. Mallory lunges, yanking the door open and dragging him out. The man fights hard, landing a sharp elbow to Mallory's ribs, but Mallory counters with a knee to the gut and forces him face first against the wall. "You're not going anywhere," Mallory says, cuffing him. Back inside the warehouse, the remaining operatives are down. Rivers is already securing the cases from the SUVs. "We've got both devices," he says, relief in his voice. But when he cracks one open, his face hardens. "This one's empty." Mallory turns to the suited man. "Where's the payload?" The man smiles faintly, blood on his lip. "You'll find out soon enough." Back at the field office, interrogation is relentless. The operative, identified as Anton Karsov, says little, but what he does say is enough to unsettle the entire team. "The grid doesn't need to win every battle," he says calmly. "Only the last one." Rivers pulls Mallory aside. "We ran a trace on communications from the warehouse. 1 outgoing ping, to a location 5 blocks from a major political summit happening tomorrow morning. Mallory's gut twists. They're going to use the weapon there. Carter steps in. Then we've got less than 12 hours to stop them, and we still don't know who's carrying the active vial. The room is silent for a moment, everyone processing the scale of what's ahead. Then Mallory says what they're all thinking. We don't wait for them to make the next move. We hit them now. The clock is ticking. In the Bureau's briefing room, the team gathers around a table strewn with maps, satellite photos, and encrypted intel sheets. Outside, the city sleeps under a blanket of cold pre-dawn mist, unaware of the danger threading its way toward the heart of downtown. Mallory stands at the head of the table, his voice steady but urgent. The political summit is at 9 a.m. We have verified chatter that the grid's active bioweapon is already in proximity to the venue. We don't know the exact delivery method, but based on the strain's properties, airborne dispersal in a confined environment would be catastrophic. We stop this before doors open. Rivers points to a satellite image of the summit complex, 3 connected buildings, each with multiple access points. Security is tight, but there are still gaps. Service entrances, underground parking, ventilation shafts. If they get inside with the vial, we might not even see them until it's too late. Carter flips through the latest intercept logs. There's one lead. Karsov's phone pinged near an abandoned print shop 2 hours before the warehouse raid. That location is 3 blocks from the summit. If the handoff happened there, the carrier could already be blending in as staff, press, or even security. Mallory thinks quickly. We split into 3 teams. Rivers, take the techs and monitor every camera in and around the summit. Carter, you and I will sweep the print shop and surrounding buildings. The 3rd team coordinates with local PD to quietly screen everyone entering the summit. There's no room for error. Within minutes, the teams are rolling out in unmarked vans. The city's streets are eerily quiet at this hour, the first traces of dawn painting the skyline in pale gray. Mallory and Carter reach the print shop first. The building is small, brick-faced, its windows dark and boarded over. The front door is chained shut, but the side alley reveals a service entrance hanging slightly ajar. Weapons drawn, they step inside. The air is stale, thick with the scent of old ink and paper dust. Faint footprints mark the floor, leading toward the back. They follow the trail to a room stacked with dusty presses and boxes of outdated flyers. On a table, under a flickering fluorescent light, sits a small insulated container, the kind used to transport biological samples. Carter opens it with gloved hands. Inside is a vial, secured in foam padding, the liquid inside faintly shimmering. Mallory exhales sharply. This could be it. Before they can process, the faint creak of floorboards above them signals movement. Carter looks up, then toward the staircase in the corner. We've got company. They ascend slowly, each step deliberate. At the top, the narrow hallway opens into a loft area, and standing there is a man in a janitor's uniform holding a pistol. His expression is calm, almost detached. You're too late, he says, his voice low. That's not the active vial. The real one's already on site. Mallory's grip tightens on his weapon. Where? The man smirks. Wouldn't you like to know? Carter moves fast, tackling the man before he can fire. The gun skitters across the floor, and within seconds the man is cuffed. Mallory radios in the update, urgency threading every word. We've recovered a decoy. Active vial is unaccounted for, likely already inside summit perimeter. Initiating lockdown. Back at the command center, Rivers is already pulling security footage. I've got something, he says over comms. Early morning delivery van, no official markings, but the driver has clearance tags. Entered service gate at 6:42 a.m. No record of exit. Mallory's pulse quickens. That's our carrier. The summit complex is now swarming with plainclothes agents, moving through corridors and service areas with precision. Mallory and Carter arrive at the loading dock, the lingering smell of diesel hanging in the air. The van is still there, parked in the far corner. They approach slowly, weapons ready. The rear doors creak open, revealing stacks of catering trays and folded linens. But tucked beneath a false floor panel is another insulated case, identical to the one in the print shop. Carter pops it open. Inside, the vial glows faintly in the dim light. No mistaking it, this is the real payload. Just as relief sets in, a shadow moves at the edge of Mallory's vision. He spins in time to see a man in a catering jacket charging toward them with a knife. Mallory sidesteps, disarming him with a swift twist and forcing him to the ground. The man snarls, "You think this ends with me?" Mallory doesn't answer. Instead, he cuffs the attacker and hands him off to arriving agents. The vial is secured in a triple-sealed containment unit, and the summit continues under quiet but heightened security. By 8:30 a.m., guests begin arriving, smiling for cameras, unaware of how close disaster came. Mallory watches from a discreet vantage point, the weight of the morning heavy on his shoulders. They won this round, but the grid's words echo in his mind. Only the last battle matters. As he leaves the venue, the city bathed now in full daylight, Mallory knows this fight is far from over. The grid will adapt, and so will they. But today, lives were saved. The relief of stopping the attack lasts only a few hours. By mid-afternoon, Mallory is back in the Bureau's secure operations center, eyes fixed on a fresh stream of intel pouring in. The grid's intercepted communications are scrambled, but fragments of phrases stand out. References to Phase 2 and the window closing. Rivers paces behind him, reading from a printout. They're moving something through the East Harbor. Shipping manifests show a container flagged for inspection, but it was cleared by a customs officer whose ID was reported stolen last month. Mallory leans forward. Container number? CN45872. Registered to a shell company in Belize, but the vessel carrying it is a local freight hauler. Docked less than an hour ago. Carter, standing at the far end of the table, is already pulling up the port's layout on a touchscreen map. If they're smuggling in another payload, the harbor's a perfect choke point, but we have to assume they've built in redundancies. This might not just be about delivery, it could be about dispersal right there on the dock. Mallory doesn't hesitate. We move now, quietly. I don't want the grid catching wind before we get eyes on the container. A small team assembles. Mallory, Carter, Rivers, and 4 tactical agents. They ride in 2 unmarked SUVs, blending into the port's steady stream of delivery trucks and forklifts. The air smells of salt and diesel, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across rows of stacked shipping containers. They park near the inspection yard. From their vantage point, they can see the container number stenciled in white on a dull blue surface. A single man in a high-visibility vest stands nearby, pretending to check paperwork. "Spotter," Carter murmurs. Mallory signals for the team to fan out. 2 agents approach from the left, another pair from the right. The spotter notices too late. By the time he reaches for his radio, Carter has already closed the distance, grabbing the device and forcing him to the ground. Mallory moves to the container's doors, his gloves gripping the cold steel. With a nod to Rivers, they swing the doors open. Inside are dozens of sealed crates, each marked with innocuous product codes. But when one is pried open, the contents tell a different story. Rows of canisters, each labeled with hazard symbols and coded serial numbers. "Biodispersal units," Rivers says grimly. "Same specs as the Summit Vial's carrier mechanism." Mallory radios HQ. "We've got the shipment. Get hazmat and containment teams here now." But as the words leave his mouth, a sharp crack splits the air. Gunfire from somewhere beyond the stacks. The team drops into cover, scanning for movement. A figure emerges from behind a forklift, rifle raised. It's not just one. Several armed men, all wearing mismatched tactical gear, fan out in a pincer movement. "Grid counter-assault team," Carter calls, returning fire in short, controlled bursts. The port erupts into chaos. Workers scatter, forklifts grind to a halt, and the sharp bark of gunfire echoes off metal walls. Mallory moves along the side of the container row, flanking one attacker and dropping him with a well-placed shot to the leg. Another charges from the right, but Rivers intercepts him, tackling him into a stack of pallets. The fight is brutal and fast. Mallory can feel the adrenaline sharpening every sense, the tang of cordite in the air, the vibration of his heartbeat in his ears. Within minutes, 3 of the grid operatives are down, and the rest retreat toward a waiting van. Mallory doesn't let them go without a fight. He sprints to the corner, firing at the van's tires. The vehicle swerves, smashes into a stack of crates, and stalls. By the time backup arrives, the scene is under control. The canisters are secured, the attackers cuffed and loaded into transport vehicles. Still, Mallory knows the operation feels too easy. As the team debriefs on site, Carter voices the same thought. What if this wasn't the real Phase 2? What if this was another decoy? Mallory's gut twists. Then whatever they're really planning is already in motion. That night, the Bureau's analysts work around the clock. By dawn, new intel confirms their fears. While the team was at the harbor, another grid cell breached a communications hub in the financial district. The breach wasn't about stealing data, it was about inserting something into the city's emergency alert system. Mallory stares at the report. They're setting up mass panic, disruption on a scale that lets them move freely while everyone's looking the other way. He knows they have hours, maybe less, before the grid's next strike. And after 2 near misses, he also knows they're running out of chances. There's no time to rest. They'll have to outthink the grid, anticipate their final play before it happens. And for that, Mallory realizes they need to take a risk, go on the offensive, and draw the grid out into the open. This time, it won't be about intercepting an attack, it'll be about ending the game entirely. The Bureau's war room feels tighter than usual, the air heavy with tension and caffeine. Every monitor glows with maps, live camera feeds, and scrolling code. Mallory stands at the head of the table, a tactical jacket thrown over his shirt, eyes fixed on the city grid displayed before him. "We've been reacting for too long," he says, his voice steady but sharp. "The grid dictates the pace, and we just keep chasing shadows. That ends today." Carter folds her arms. "You're suggesting we bait them?" "Exactly," Mallory replies. "We leak a high-value target, a fake target, something too tempting for them to ignore. Then we control the field, control the timing, and when they come, we close the net." Rivers leans forward, scanning the data. "What's the bait?" Mallory taps the screen, bringing up an image of a nondescript government warehouse on the city's outskirts. "We seed chatter that we're moving the summit's security master key there for recalibration. Without that key, the city's emergency response grid stays locked down. With it, they could manipulate everything: traffic lights, evacuation orders, lockdown protocols. It's exactly the kind of leverage they'd kill for." The plan takes shape quickly. Communications specialists craft fake transmissions, intentionally sloppy enough for the grid's listening posts to catch. Surveillance teams set up in the warehouse's perimeter, disguising themselves as utility workers, delivery drivers, even joggers looping the block. By nightfall, the trap is set. The warehouse hums under the glow of sodium streetlights, its interior filled with crates and equipment, but in the center, a single steel case sits under a spotlight, the supposed security master key. Mallory sits in a darkened observation van 2 blocks away, headset in place. "All units report." "North Alley secure," comes the reply from Delta Team. "Roof access covered," Bravo Team answers. "South Street's quiet," Carter confirms, her voice low. They wait. Minutes drag into an hour. Then, movement. Thermal imaging picks up 3 heat signatures slipping into the alley. "They're here," Rivers whispers. Mallory watches through a long-range lens as the figures move with practiced precision, cutting the chain on a side door. 2 slip inside while the third lingers outside, scanning for threats. Inside the warehouse, hidden cameras stream the scene to Mallory's monitor. The intruders bypass sensors with portable jammers, moving straight for the steel case. One kneels to check it for traps, the other covers the door. "Hold," Mallory murmurs into the mic. "We want all of them inside before we close." A second team of 3 arrives, joining the lookout. Now there are 6. One taps an earpiece, signaling something, probably to a driver nearby. "Drivers are 7th, Carter notes. Mallory's jaw tightens. Then he's not leaving. As the intruders lift the case, Mallory gives the command. "Go." The warehouse doors slam shut, heavy locks engaging. Tactical teams flood the space from concealed positions, flashbangs exploding in blinding bursts. The intruders scramble, weapons drawn, but they're disoriented. Carter and Rivers breach from opposite ends, shouting commands over the chaos. Within seconds, 4 are down, cuffed and disarmed. 2 manage to slip toward the side exit, only to find Mallory blocking the way, sidearm steady. "Party's over," he says flatly. They freeze, then drop their weapons. Outside, Bravo Team intercepts the driver, yanking him from the van before he can even reach the ignition. The sweep is clean. 7 operatives, all alive but rattled. The steel case, empty except for a note reading "Better luck next time," is photographed for the Bureau's files. Back in the van, Mallory reviews the IDs. 2 of these guys are confirmed grid logistics. The others are muscle, probably hired short-term. But this one, he points to a man with sharp eyes and a broken nose. "This is Mace Duval, Grid's chief of field ops." Carter exhales. "That's big." "It's bigger than big," Mallory says. "With Duval in custody, we can dismantle their cells before they regroup. They transport the prisoners to a secure holding facility, avoiding main roads to keep the move off-grid. But as they near the compound, a sudden blackout sweeps the block. Streetlights, traffic signals, even the facility's outer flood lamps go dark. EMP pulse, Rivers mutters. They're hitting the grid remotely. Mallory's instincts flare. They're coming for Duval. Everyone stay sharp. A black SUV screeches into view, its headlights slicing through the dark. Doors fly open and masked shooters spill out, weapons spitting muzzle flashes. The Bureau convoy responds instantly. Tires squeal, doors slam, agents return fire. Mallory bails out of the lead vehicle, using its frame for cover. He spots two shooters flanking left, trying to reach the prisoner van. Without hesitation, he breaks from cover, sprinting into their line of approach. His shots drop one, the second retreats behind the SUV. Carter's voice crackles over comms. Rear secure, van still locked. Another SUV appears at the far end of the street. This one doesn't stop. It accelerates straight toward the convoy. Ramming attempt, Rivers shouts. Mallory fires at the windshield. The driver swerves at the last second, clipping a parked car and spinning out. By the time the smoke clears, two of the attackers are down and the rest are fleeing on foot. Within minutes, the blackout lifts, the streetlights flickering back to life. The assault has failed. Duval is still in custody, and the Bureau still holds the upper hand. But Mallory isn't celebrating. He knows the grid wouldn't burn this many assets on one rescue unless they were protecting something bigger. And whatever that something is, it's still out there. The interrogation room is dim, lit only by a single fluorescent strip overhead that hums faintly. Duval sits at the metal table, hands cuffed, his posture relaxed in a way that feels deliberate, almost like he's the one in control. Mallory studies him through the one-way glass, noting the calculated smirk, the steady breathing. This isn't a man afraid of prison. Carter steps in first, a slim file in her hand. She tosses it on the table, the pages splaying open to crime scene photos, bank records, and surveillance stills. You've got enough charges here to bury you 3 times over, Duval. Kidnapping, conspiracy, cyber terrorism, attempted murder. Pick one, they all stick. Duval glances at the photos but doesn't touch them. You think this scares me? You think I'm just another street thug you can roll over? The grid doesn't die in a cell, it adapts. Mallory enters, closing the door behind him with a slow, deliberate click. The grid's not adapting to anything this time, he says, taking a seat opposite Duval. You lost 7 operatives, including yourself. Your communications are compromised. We've got enough intel to freeze your accounts and tear down your networks piece by piece. Duval chuckles, low and cold. You think you've cut off the head, but you haven't even touched the spine. Mallory leans in, voice low but edged. Then educate me. What's the spine? Instead of answering, Duval shifts in his seat, glancing at the mirrored wall. Who's watching? Is it the director? Or are you keeping this little meeting just between us? Mallory doesn't bite. Answer the question. Silence stretches. Duval finally leans forward, his smirk widening. You've got a week, maybe less. You'll see what's coming when the streets start turning on themselves, and you won't be able to stop it, not even with all your toys and your shiny FBI badge. Carter slams the file shut. We can hold you here indefinitely, Duval. No lawyer, no phone call. You think your people are loyal enough to wait around for you? Duval's eyes flash with something, amusement, maybe pity. They're not waiting. They're already moving. Before Mallory can press further, Rivers bursts into the observation room, signaling urgently. Mallory excuses himself, stepping out into the hallway. What is it? He asks. Rivers hands him a tablet showing a live feed from downtown. A massive crowd is gathering, filling the square in front of City Hall. On-screen captions from a news channel scroll by. Breaking unrest erupts over alleged FBI surveillance program. Mallory scrolls through other feeds. Similar gatherings are forming across multiple districts, fueled by a wave of coordinated social media posts claiming the Bureau has been illegally monitoring citizens. This is them, Rivers says. The grid planted the story. They're trying to turn the public against us, fast. Mallory's mind races. If the public loses trust, the Bureau's ability to operate openly will collapse. And if grid operatives are embedded in those crowds, chaos will be the perfect cover for targeted strikes. He heads back into the interrogation room. You've started this, Duval, but here's the difference between you and me. I'm not playing catch-up anymore. For the first time, Duval's smirk falters. You think you can stop a movement once it's in motion? Mallory leans over the table, meeting his gaze. I don't stop movements. I remove the people controlling them. Leaving Duval in Carter's custody, Mallory heads straight to the war room. The team is already pulling up social media analytics, tracing the earliest posts back to burner accounts linked to a single IP cluster on the city's west side. That's a grid relay node, Carter says, joining him. If we take it out, the coordination dies. But, she hesitates, it's in a residential zone. If we move in with force, the media will shred us. Mallory considers it, then pulls up a blueprint of the area. We go quiet. No tactical vans, no heavy gear. 2 teams, 1 entry, 1 perimeter. Get in, pull the node, ghost out before anyone knows we were there. Within an hour, the operation is in motion. Mallory rides with Carter in an unmarked SUV, while Rivers leads the perimeter team 2 blocks out. They move under cover of darkness, blending with late-night traffic. The target building is an aging apartment complex, lights flickering in the hallways. Inside, a 3rd-floor unit hums with the sound of cooling fans. Through the cracked door, Mallory spots racks of modified servers, cables snaking across the floor like vines. A lone tech sits at a desk, fingers flying over multiple keyboards. Mallory signals to Carter. They breach in silence, Carter cutting power to the rigs while Mallory cuffs the operator. Within seconds, the server lights die, the coordinated social media flood grinding to a halt. Across the city, the false narrative loses momentum, replaced by confusion and scattered disbelief. Back at HQ, the analytics confirm it. Engagement drops by 70% in under 5 minutes. The crowd outside City Hall starts thinning, the chants losing force. Mallory returns to the interrogation room. Duvall looks up, the smirk gone entirely. You pulled the node, he says flatly. Mallory sits across from him, calm but unyielding. You're not as untouchable as you think, and now your window's closing. For the first time, Duvall doesn't respond. His silence says more than any taunt. Mallory knows they've shifted the balance, but the week Duvall promised is still ticking down, and whatever's coming next will hit harder than anything they've faced so far. Morning light filters through the blinds of the war room, casting thin stripes across the table cluttered with maps, case files, and half-empty coffee cups. Mallory hasn't slept. None of them have. The brief silence following the takedown of the grid's relay node is deceptive, too calm, like the air before a storm. Carter enters, tablet in hand, her face tight with urgency. We pulled more from the servers before they shut down. There's chatter about something called Blacklight Protocol. Mallory straightens in his chair. Sounds like an operational name. Details? Carter shakes her head. Minimal data. Just a series of encrypted files with timestamps. The earliest one is in 2 days. Rivers, already leaning over the map, frowns. Could be a cyber attack. Could be physical. The grid's not usually subtle. They like spectacle. Mallory knows that's true. In the past, the grid strikes were designed to make noise. Large enough to get media coverage, chaotic enough to overwhelm law enforcement response. But this feels different. They start cross-referencing the timestamps with city events, building a list. Political rallies, cultural festivals, public transit upgrades, all possibilities. Then one entry catches Mallory's attention. A citywide emergency preparedness drill, scheduled to take place across multiple locations simultaneously. Perfect cover, Mallory says. Crowds, confusion, emergency services spread thin. If they hijack the drill, they can stage real incidents, and it'll take hours to tell them apart. Rivers runs a quick search. 4 major sites involved. If they hit even 2, we'll be drowning in chaos. Mallory leans forward. Then we don't let them get that far. We need Duvall talking, now. Back in the interrogation room, Duvall sits where they left him, arms folded, eyes closed like he's meditating. Mallory doesn't bother with subtlety. He drops a folder on the table containing the drill's itinerary, letting the pages fan out in front of him. You know what this is, Mallory says, and you know what happens if your people turn it into a live op. Duvall glances down at the papers, then back up with a slow grin. You're assuming you can stop it. The thing about the Blacklight Protocol, it's not one attack. It's a chain reaction. You can't cut one wire without setting off the rest. Mallory's jaw tightens. Tell me where it starts. Duvall's smile widens. Why would I do that? You put me in here, took my network, and think I'll just hand you the win? Carter, standing in the corner, steps forward. Because if it goes off, you're done. Not in here, but out there. Your name will be tied to mass casualties. The kind of thing that makes even your allies turn on you. Duvall's gaze flickers, but only for a moment. You're bluffing. You don't have enough to link me. Mallory leans across the table, voice low and deliberate. I don't need to link you to stop you. I just need to make sure when the hammer falls, you're the one still standing under it. The silence stretches. Finally, Duval exhales, his grin fading. It starts with the power grid. Mallory exchanges a quick glance with Carter. Go on. They'll trigger a rolling blackout during the drill. In the dark, every emergency call will spike. First responders will think it's part of the exercise, and by the time they realize it's not, the secondary hits will already be in motion. Mallory presses. Secondary? Duval shakes his head. That's all you get without a deal. Mallory stands abruptly, signaling to Carter. They leave the room, heading straight for the operations desk. We need every substation on the city grid flagged for intrusion, Mallory orders, and we're putting eyes on all 4 drill sites, surveillance drones, plainclothes agents, everything. The next 24 hours are a blur. The team splits into rotating shifts, tracking every movement near critical infrastructure. Carter coordinates with local utilities, planting remote shutdown overrides in case the grid tries to force a surge. Rivers oversees the field agents, placing them in key choke points near the drill sites. On the morning of the drill, the city buzzes with activity. Streets are lined with barricades. Volunteers in reflective vests guide simulated evacuees, and emergency vehicles idle at designated staging areas. Mallory and Carter monitor the feeds from the mobile command unit parked near City Hall. At 9:17, a spike appears on the utility grid monitor. One of the substations in the north sector is drawing power well above normal. They're starting, Carter says, already on the comms. North team, move in now, contain it before they blow the transformer. The feed switches to Rivers' body cam as he and his team breach the substation's control room. 2 masked operatives scramble at the control panels, one clutching a tablet connected by cables to the main console. Rivers' team takes them down fast, securing the tablet. Back at the command unit, Mallory exhales, but the relief lasts seconds. Another alert flashes across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. South Sector Water Treatment Plant. They've got multiple entry points, Carter realizes. The blackout's just one part. They're hitting the water supply too. Mallory knows they can't be everywhere at once. Rivers, lock down your site and redeploy south. We'll coordinate local PD to cover the west and east sectors. The minutes that follow are razor thin. Each time they neutralize one threat, another flares up elsewhere. But gradually, the pattern emerges. These aren't random strikes. Each one is meant to pull resources farther from the city center. Then, Mallory sees it on the map. The converging movement of remaining grid operatives toward one unmarked location 3 blocks from City Hall. That's the real target, he says. Everything else is noise. Carter looks at him sharply. What's there? Mallory pulls up the building schematics. Communications hub. If they take it out, they cut emergency coordination for the whole downtown sector. There's no time for full deployment. Mallory grabs his gear, Carter right behind him as they race through side streets toward the hub. The sound of distant sirens mixes with the dull thud of their boots on pavement. As they round the final corner, 3 masked figures emerge from the building's service entrance, one carrying a black duffel heavy enough to swing with weight. Mallory doesn't wait. He closes the gap, tackling the lead figure while Carter draws on the others. The duffel hits the ground with a metallic clatter. Carter kicks it open. Inside, a compact EMP device wired and primed. Mallory cuffs the man beneath him, yanking off the mask to reveal one of Duval's known lieutenants. Game's over, Mallory says, voice cold. But deep down, he knows it's not over. Not until Duval himself is broken, and the clock on that is still ticking. The sun is barely up when the city starts to breathe again. Power is restored to the northern sector, the water treatment plant is back under control, and the communications hub remains intact. But Mallory knows the blacklight protocol isn't truly over. The grid doesn't invest this much just to walk away. Inside the mobile command unit, the air is thick with exhaustion and the scent of burnt coffee. Carter is bent over her screen, running through every remaining data fragment pulled from the seized servers. Rivers stands at the whiteboard, mapping out every known operative's last location. Mallory steps in, shutting the door behind him. The city's safe for now, he says, but Duval's still out there pulling strings, and he's not the type to leave loose ends. Carter glances up, eyes sharp despite the fatigue. We've got one last breadcrumb. An outbound message from Duval's burner phone hit a cell tower near the waterfront 3 hours ago. It's encrypted, but the metadata says it's going to an offshore relay. Rivers crosses his arms. He's making a run for it. Mallory shakes his head. Not yet, he's finishing something. They all know what that means. The grid's leader won't disappear without trying to leave a scar. Within minutes, the team is geared up and moving. The waterfront district is quiet at this hour. The fishing boats still moored. The warehouses lined up like silent sentinels. Mallory and Carter split off from River's unit, moving along the south pier where the GPS trace put Duval's last signal. Halfway down the pier, they hear it, a low mechanical hum, too steady to be a boat engine. Mallory follows the sound to an unmarked warehouse with its loading bay door half rolled down. Through the gap, the glint of metal and blinking lights catches his eye. He signals Carter, and they move in. Inside, the space is dominated by a long, narrow device mounted on a rail system, an industrial-grade drone launcher. Nearby, crates of compact canisters sit open, each one fitted with dispersal nozzles. Carter's eyes widen. Gas deployment system, if this stuff's airborne… Mallory doesn't let her finish. We can't let it fire. Footsteps echo from the far side of the warehouse. Duval steps into view, flanked by 2 armed guards. He looks calm, almost amused, as if he's been expecting them. You've been busy, Duval says, his voice carrying across the concrete floor. But you're too late. This launch will blanket half the downtown core in minutes. No fatalities, just panic. And panic breaks systems better than bombs. Mallory steps forward, keeping his hands visible but his tone hard. You're not walking out of here, Duval. Shut it down. Duval smirks. You think this is about me? I'm just the conductor. The symphony plays on, whether I'm here or not. The guards move to raise their weapons, but Carter fires first, dropping one with a precise shot to the shoulder. Mallory lunges for the other, driving him into the control console. Sparks fly as the man's weapon discharges into the panel, the lights on the launcher flickering. Duval bolts toward the side exit, but Mallory is faster. He grabs him by the collar, slamming him against the corrugated wall. You want to finish your symphony? Mallory growls. You'll be doing it from a prison cell. Carter calls out. The console's fried, but the launch sequence is still live. We've got 90 seconds. Mallory drags Duval toward the control panel. You're going to stop it. Duval's defiance flickers, replaced by a calculating stillness. If I do, I lose everything. Mallory tightens his grip. If you don't, you lose more. There's a long beat, then Duval spits out a string of override codes. Carter keys them in, the countdown freezing at 6 seconds. The launcher systems power down with a hiss, the canisters settling into silence. Outside, River's unit arrives, flooding the warehouse with the sound of boots and shouted commands. Duval is cuffed, his remaining guards secured. Mallory takes one last look at the drone launcher before turning to Carter. Evidence lockup. I don't want this tech disappearing. By noon, Duval is in federal custody, the last of his operatives booked or on the run with nowhere left to hide. The press conference is held on the steps of City Hall, cameras flashing as the mayor thanks the Joint Task Force for preventing a citywide disaster. Mallory stands at the edge of the crowd, his FBI badge clipped openly for the first time in days. He catches Carter's eye and gives a small nod. They both know the grid isn't completely gone. Networks like that never vanish entirely. But their leadership is shattered, their plans exposed. Later, in the quiet of the command center, Mallory reviews the case file one last time before sealing it. The name Blacklight Protocol will go into the record as an operation that nearly broke the city. But in the margin of his own notes, he writes something else. Leadership matters. So does standing your ground. As he leaves for the night, the streets are alive again. Music from a corner saxophonist drifting through the air, laughter from a nearby cafe. It's the kind of sound that reminds him why the fight is worth it. And if the grid ever resurfaces, they'll find him waiting.